Now let's focus on something else that kills people: disease. Specifically, let's talk about what's concerning the World Health Organization. Disease X, the next pandemic. This isn't a specific disease, it's a warning about the future. The WHO says that another pandemic will definitely come. Disease X, whatever it is, may be worse than the Wuhan virus, and the world needs to be prepared. And the WHO is right, because this disease X may not be too far away. In fact, it may be closer and more familiar to us than expected. Earlier this month, the WHO had declared that the Wuhan virus was no longer a public health emergency, but it had warned people not to become complacent. It was still out there, mutating, biding its time. It had the potential to strike back. So could it be that the Wuhan virus has actually returned as the dreaded disease X? Because the cases are rising again. Back where it all began, China. A report.
The annual World Health Assembly is taking place in Geneva. It comes just weeks after the World Health Organization said the Wuhan virus is no longer a public health emergency. That was earlier this month. But at the time, the WHO warned the world not to become complacent.
The worst thing any country could do now is to use this news as a reason to let down its guard, to dismantle the systems it has built, or to send the message to its people that COVID-19 is nothing to worry about.
This week, the WHO issued another warning. It told the world not to delay the reforms needed to prepare for the next pandemic.
We cannot kick this can down the road. If we do not make the changes that must be made, then who will? And if we do not make them now, and when? When the next pandemic comes knocking, and it will, we must be ready to answer decisively, collectively, and equitably.
He said, when the next pandemic comes knocking, and it will. There's no doubt. The WHO has come up with a designation for the future pathogen, Disease X. We don't know what it is exactly, where it comes from, where it will strike, but Disease X will cause the next pandemic. And it will be even deadlier than the Wuhan virus. It doesn't seem to be on the WHO's radar yet. The agency released this list of priorities. As you can see, Disease X comes in at number 9. That basically means that even though we don't know what it is, the WHO is keeping its eyes open, watching out for any indication that Disease X has arrived. Of course, that may just be too optimistic from the WHO, because Disease X may not be something entirely new. We say this because the Wuhan virus has mutated again, and cases are on the rise. The Wuhan virus is once again going rampant in China. Estimates say that by the end of June, China will see as many as 65 million cases per week. This figure was quoted by the country's top respiratory disease expert, Zhong Nanshan. In fact, he said that infections could hit 40 million a week right now. The variant behind the rise is the XBB. It's another of the endless Omicron subvariants. Chinese state media says XBB has led to 80% of the new infections in China. China's National Health Commission says XBB has greater transmissibility and immune escape than earlier strains of Omicron. The country even recently approved 2 new vaccines targeting XBB. Despite this, China says there's nothing to worry about. State mouthpiece Global Times released this report today. It says there will be limited impact, but believe China at your own risk. The US Department of Health quite clearly doesn't. Its National Institutes of Health, or NIH, released this report yesterday. It says about 10% of those analyzed experienced long-term symptoms or long COVID after 6 months. These were all Omicron patients. So, even though the pandemic is over, the danger hasn't passed. Not while the Wuhan virus continues to mutate. It's not certain that the WHO's dreaded Disease X will be a variant of the Wuhan virus, but there's no guarantee that it won't be. China needs to stop underplaying the problem and work with the world. The last thing we need is the dragon releasing yet another pandemic.